Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning. Hello. How are you doing?
So where's my lunchtime sandwiches?
No such luck.
I left my coffee in the car.
Morning, Linda.
I left my coffee in the car.
Morning. Sylvia will be along shortly. She has another call.
Nice and warm in here, just right.
Yes. Interesting.
You want to handle the meeting, did you say?
No, Sylvia will be along shortly. She just has another call, so.
Oh, okay. How you doing, Al? Morning.
Nate, Dave Pierce is here also. Do we want to try to give him checks now? Or I think he's coming tomorrow morning.
Let's see. Yes, say yes.
All ready for Thanksgiving, Bill?
Oh, yeah. Usually I go to my son's house. Very low-key, all the holidays, Thanksgiving, whatever, until,
You able to get together with any friends and family?
how about you?
Get my dad from Massachusetts and have him over.
Oh, okay.
That time of them to honor to volunteer in the church. He is there setting rare forms of flowers and their therapeutic potential for various things.
Liquid refreshments.
Good morning, Linda. Can you hear us okay?
Yep, now I'm in.
Okay. Good morning, Peter.
Yep.
Is that you, Peter?
Yeah.
I can't quite hear you.
It's Dan O'Neill.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks, Dan.
Everything.
I'm ready.
You are ready. Okay. Here's Sylvia. Dan O'Neill is the phone number down there.
Oh, okay. I'll rename him. This is Dan O'Neill.
The packet?
I have the whole thing.
Okay.
How come the water bill for this building is less than my water? I mean, it's, I'm just two people living in a house and this is a whole building.
We don't wash dishes here generally, so.
Or take showers.
Or take showers, okay.
All right. Hi, Bill.
Or water lawns.
All right, here we go. Linda. Hi, Linda. Good to see you.
Hi.
There's Dan O'Neill. Hi, Dan. And we have
Hello. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Dan. We have David from Goffstown in the house here and Al Hall.
In the CIP. Oh. No, stand.
Jeff Porter. Good God. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for coming.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, pretty much.
Everyone staying home for Thanksgiving or?
My wife is from Toronto.
The O'Neills are, I can tell you that.
Yeah, good.
The Canadian, but yeah, my wife does,
Yeah, I was watching the news last night and looking at the airport scenes and, oh my golly. That does not interest me.
So much for the recommendations, I guess.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd be better just to swap recipes through email or something. Carl Epic of our crew has an apple cheddar pie recipe. Cheddar brown sugar, I don't know, crazy recipe. We all want to try it.
No.
Yeah, we are voting that Carl bring a sample pie into the office.
It's not going to survive.
For you, Sylvia.
It'll be gone by Friday.
I'm sure it'll be gone. This is why we make 2 pies, Carl. 2.
I'm making 2, but the other one's a pumpkin.
Darn it. He will not be persuaded, evidently.
We'll see. Maybe I can make another one.
Hi, Peter. You are muted. There you go.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. Up here comes a big group. Oh, golly. Okay. Mike Whitten, where are you? There we go. We have our chair in the house. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, good morning.
And we have a phone number. I'm hoping that is Peter Griffin. And Art. Hi.
Yes, I'm here.
And there's Lucy from DOT. Tim White from DES.
Hi, Sylvia. This is James Veo. I'm just checking to see that you can hear my audio clearly.
Yes, we can hear your audio clearly. Thank you for checking in.
Ray Clement here.
Ray, could you, you must be 4803?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll rename you.
Hi, Sylvia.
Hi, who is that?
It's Lucy, New Hampshire DOT.
Oh, hi, Lucy. I'm doing too many things at once.
Good morning,
Good morning, and there's Tom.
Brian.
There's Brian. Okay, good. We're getting a good crowd. Because these meetings are edge of your seat kind of stuff, and I know you like our ratings. There's Mike. Mike Witten. Hi, Mike. And Susan is having trouble staying in. Hi, Suzanne. From Londonderry.
Hi there.
Hi.
How's everyone?
Good. Ah.
What is he doing?
Here comes Dean Williams.
No, how much of that are they doing in person?
Dick Marshall's excused because he's got ho, ho, ho.
Yeah.
I love that reason for not being here. I don't know that I would look good in a white beard, but because of COVID, I am gaining that belly. I can say that. Oh, yeah. It's dangerous.
Like the freshman 15?
Yeah.
COVID-19.
Yeah, it's COVID-19. Yeah, God help me. All right. I haven't not let someone in unless they tried to come in and I didn't see them in time. I don't think I got John. Hi, John O'Connor. Good to see you're here.
Morning.
I just let another phone number in. See who that is. That's Peter Griffin. Okay, phone ending in 8633. Wondering if you could identify yourself.
That's a Vermont phone.
That's Maddie.
Maddie. Okay.
Yeah.
Maddie. You don't have to rename. Okay. Good. Well, it's 11:33, Jeff.
We got a quorum here?
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, we have a quorum.
Very good. All right. Excuse me. The chair of the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission has found that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission and committees thereof are authorized to meet electronically. So we'll call to order the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And I think we'll do a combined roll call and meeting minutes of October 27th.
Okay, great.
Do we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved.
I'll
Second,
second.
Coonhart.
All right, Linda, I heard Linda Kuhnhart second. Who was the one who made the motion?
Ray.
Ray Clement?
Ray, yeah, Ray Clement.
Thanks, Ray. All right, so I'll go down the list. Auburn, Jeff Porter.
Aye.
Bedford, Bill DeShaco.
Aye.
Anyone else from Bedford here? I may have missed my checklist. No, usually we have a full house. Candia, Al Hall.
I'm here and, yes,
Thanks, Al. I didn't see anyone from Chester.
Yep, I'm here, Deb.
Ah, sorry, Deb. Thank you.
I may have to leave early though.
Okay, so Deb Munson, Chester.
Aye.
Thanks, Deb. Anyone from Deerfield I may have missed? Okay, no. Derry, we have Jeff Moulton.
Here and approved.
Thank you, Jeff. John O'Connor.
Here and approve.
Thank you. From Francistown, I have Linda Kuhnhart.
Here and approve.
All right. Goffstown, I saw Dave Pierce, who's in the office.
I'm here in the room. I approve.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else from Goffstown or Francistown that I missed? No, good. I didn't see anyone from Hooksett. Anyone? Okay, and London, oh, I have more people coming. Oh gosh, what did I just do? That just scared me. Okay, from Londonderry, we have Brian Battaglia.
Here and approved.
Suzanne Brunel.
Here and approved.
Art Rugg.
I am here and yes on the minutes.
Okay, great. From Manchester, we have Peter Capano.
Yes, I'm here. I approve.
Thank you. Ray Clement.
Here and approve.
Dan O'Neill.
Here and approve.
I didn't see anyone from New Boston. Okay, and from where we have Tom Clow.
Here, approve.
Thanks, Tom. Wyndham, I didn't see anyone. And I saw who just came with us, got onto the meeting, is Andrew Haddock from Chester.
Here and approved.
Anyone else from the communities that I may have missed? Okay, let's see, from DOT, we have Lucy St. John.
I'm here and I abstain.
We have Mike Witten from MTA.
I'm here, I vote yes.
Non-voting members, but still just to recognize, we have Tim White from DES and Dean Williams from Central. Okay. I think that's it.
Very good. So, new.
All right.
Do you want to take this one?
Carl?
I'm sorry, the audio dropped out. This is the.
So we're on new business congestion management process.
Thank you. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to misspeak. And let me know if my audio goes bad here. I can always stop my video. I'm on a iffy line. Good to see you all. The CMP item, as you know, we had a review recently with our federal partners, and the CMP is finalized and it's out for public hearing. Well, no, actually, I'm sorry. We need you to open the public hearing, but we need a continuance from approving the CMP this month to next month in December because of the feedback and comments we received, which were all excellent. We need the time to incorporate them. So that's really what we ask for is a motion to approve, to adopt, but I'm sorry, excuse me, a motion to open the public hearing and continuance through our next meeting.
I move to open the public hearing and continue it to the next meeting.
Second.
Linda Kuhnhart seconded it. And that was Andrew Haddock that made the motion. And just to recognize, John Hiltz from Wyndham has joined us. All right, I'll go through this again. And before we do that, does anyone have any questions for Carl?
And I'll only add comments, or any of you have comments or questions. That's what the public hearing process is for as well.
All right, so the motion is to open it and to table it till January. Continue it till December meeting. All right. Jeff in Auburn,
Aye.
Bill in Bedford,
Aye.
Al Hall,
Yes.
Andrew Haddock,
Aye.
Deb Munson,
Aye.
Jeff and Derry, Jeff Walton.
You're muted.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeff. John O'Connor,
Yes.
Linda in Francistown,
Yes.
Dave in Goffstown.
Yes.
Thank you, Dave. Brian in Londonderry,
Aye.
and Suzanne,
Aye.
Arthur,
Yes.
Peter Capano,
Yes.
Ray Clement.
Yes.
Also from Manchester is Dan.
Yes.
And in Ware is Tom. Tom Clow.
Yes, I just had to unmute myself.
No problem. We all do that on occasion. And in Wyndham is John Hiltz.
Can I abstain? I actually missed the beginning of the conversation.
Sure. Okay.
All right, moving on, I guess. Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
Sylvia, I'll vote yes.
Oh, goodness. I am so sorry. I do that a lot. Mike Whitten, thank you, Mike.
No
Votes
problem.
yes. And Lucy St. John's from DOT.
Yes,
Thanks, Lucy. Sorry.
not a problem.
Let's see. Now we will move right to Metropolitan Transportation Plan with James.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
It's actually both of us, Sylvia. I'm going to introduce the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and take the first 10 or so slides. James is running the PowerPoint remotely, so I'm going to have to chime in every once in a while and say, next slide. But just to give everyone a reminder about what this document is, and I think many of you will know, but anybody who's new, MPOs are required to develop, update, and maintain a Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Other names for this are Regional Transportation Plan, Long Range Transportation Plan. We're going to go with what the feds, we think, prefer to call it, which is Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And what the MTP is a document that is part of the performance-based planning portfolio of documents that Federal Highway, Federal Transit, and the federal agencies require of us as an MPO. We are working from the vision, and I'll get to this on the next slide, a vision statement from SNHPC. It connects to goals and objectives, which James is going to go through in a little bit, and ultimately to what projects, programs, and transportation we operate. And then lastly, in the circle of life here with transportation planning, performance, evaluation of taking the problems into consideration, developing projects, implementing them, and then seeing how they do over time. So this slide kind of covers the many purposes of it. Of course, your economic development, transportation, sustainability, and then very importantly, it's constrained over a 20-year or longer planning horizon. And here it is, 2020, almost 2021. And we are looking out, all of our data, all of our projections now go out to 2045. Next slide, James. So again, here's, we call it the Cliff Notes version, an abbreviated version of the vision statement. This is from the 2015 SNHPC Comp Plan. And you can read all these items here. Well, the two in highlight are specific to transportation, although the other aspects weave into transportation. This is specifically to expand and improve upon local and regional transportation choices for all modes of travel, including bicycle and walking, And also that we believe public transit, it needs to be a priority to enhance in the region. Next slide, Jim. And the scope of work, the final document will cover all modes, as we've said. The traditional ones we're all familiar with: highways, transit, bike, even connections to the airport, rail, other things like TDM, transportation demand management, which some of these fit under, as well as technology, for example, information technology systems. And all of these will be viewed through the filter of our these are required federally designated planning factors. And we're going to get into this more in the goals and objectives section, but next slide, Jim. Here they are for you. There's 10 now. When I started in this business a decade plus ago, there were 8, but with each transportation authorization, the Congress seems to add some more things. It kind of, they add, whatever's been trending, whatever becomes more important, they add in. But again, not going to go over all these in depth, but you'll notice in each one there's the transportation system. Third one, security. And that one, of course, really, I believe, came out of the 9/11 time period. Number 4, accessibility and mobility for people and freight. Freight's been a big emphasis lately for federal highway. And to protect and enhance the environment, promote energy conservation, quality of life. This is kind of a grab bag here, but they're all important things that the plan will need to consider and include, incorporate. Next slide, Jim.
Hey, Carl, just a heads up, your audio cut out on item 2, so you may want to cut your video.
Yeah, I'll do that right now. You can still see me, but I'm static. So, and then these last 5 here, enhance integration and connectivity of the transportation system across all modes for people and freight. System management operation, once what's built out there is there, maintain it properly and make sure it's operating safely, et cetera. Emphasize preservation of the existing system. This has been a big one for years. Build it and then make sure it's intact and operational and safe. And improve the resiliency and reliability of the transportation system, reduce or mitigate stormwater. This is another environmental one. And lastly, enhance travel and tourism. Next slide, Jim. So what we're going to go over in the next 20 or so slides is, and really the meat of today is this introduction about the scope, overview, goals and objectives. Jim will go into in depth. Existing conditions, we're going to give you a sample of existing conditions, primarily around population and employment. And then there'll be some overview of plan evaluation, performance measures, some of that which is we're going to be building on. Next month, and we're basically just wrapping this up this week, the model forecasting data, which will go to our consultant to finish the travel demand model, and the financial plan, basically an assessment of the resources we have available over the next 25 years and the projects that we are aware of, know about, think might come about, and how that lines up, basically making sure that we have identified the funds to do what we plan to do. Next slide. So this is the population section. Again, just the sampling. Next slide, Jim. And these are cut a couple different ways, and just to go over, high level, this is population over time in all of our 14 communities. And the coloring kind of shows, some increases, decreases, shows you where, over time, these communities have grown, but kind of more degree of magnitude. You can see in the case of Derry here, in 2000, it had a big bump up to 34,000, but projections are a little bit of a decrease. So that's kind of a way to interpret this. We've got some other graphs here that will help comprehend this a little bit better. But at the bottom is what we really want to point out is that the overall region has been growing. And these are the nominal numbers up to about 266,000 in the region in the last decennial census in 2010. And it's projected to continue to grow at a decreasing rate. Jim, next one. Again, this is population over time, just showing the increase for each community in that 10-year period, or decrease in the case of Manchester. You'll notice Manchester on the left in 1960 had 73% of the population, and then over time, it's decreasing as it increases in the other communities. And at the bottom, these are the 100%, of course, for the entire region. Next slide, Jim. And here again is another way to depict the population change over the last 40 years. 1980, Manchester represented 20% of the population and of the growth, and the other communities were experiencing 91%. By 2010, it decreased across the region to 4% in Manchester and 14% across the region. And then the third column here, the stacked column, 1980 at the top, 2010 in the middle, and 2040 at the bottom. This depicts kind of the change of the population, again, swaying away from Manchester and to the entire region. Okay, click through two more, Jim. So from 1980 to 2010, 54% of an increase in population over the region. And in the next, looking back 10 through 2040 will be a 10% increase. So the growth of the last 40 years is gone. And in fact, you'll see in the next couple of slides that it's projected to just continue to decrease over the next 25 years. Not go away, but decrease. This is a fun slide, and it's a little bit confusing at first, but just, let your eyes glaze over a little bit. You'll see a dashed line in the middle. Each of the smaller lines are our communities, or your communities, and they all, over time, lots of growth. The big tall one could be a small town that had experienced explosive growth, 12, 14, 16%, and then that comes down. The dashed line shows the flattening and decreasing growth. The region's averaged around 2% in 1990, come down, underneath 1.5%, looks like, by 2000, and kind of levels off, just somewhat just above zero as we get out to 2030 and 2040. Now, these are projections, and this is subject to change, but what we know is that the projections are over time that the growth will be significantly less than it was over the last 40, 50 years. Jim, next slide. Okay, and so a little bit on employment. Next slide. So this is again, the entire region, average number of jobs, taken in slices, the average number on the left, 2015 to 2017. These are within each community. Again, the majority, 49%, if you look at the Manchester line, the only orange line, most of the jobs are in Manchester. And then there are smaller slices where the jobs are located. And then the jobs per square mile of land, obviously the most being in, I think I'm copying that here. In Manchester with 2,050 per square mile.
So you cut out there again, Carl?
Yeah, I thought so. That's why I paused. But just bringing attention to Manchester with the jobs per acre, the densest there. And then also across the SNHPC region, the average is 270 jobs per square mile of land. Next slide, please, Jim. And this is just another way to look at it. We've kind of, and we're going to be providing some of these kinds of graphics in the plan that just kind of really tell the story. About half of the region's jobs are in Manchester in the top left. And then you go over to the right, majority of the region's jobs are in Bedford and Manchester. Lower left, a supermajority, over 2/3 are in Londonderry. And then lastly, the bottom right, 4/5, 80% of all jobs are in Hooksett, Manchester, Bedford, and Londonderry. Next slide, please. So again, as we mentioned, we have this transportation model, and if you looked at we had another graph with numbers, but these numbers are a little bit different than the one from the census earlier. These are for New Hampshire Employment Security, but these are what we're using in the travel demand model. Again, over the 2015 to 2045 employment period, projection period, it looks like we're projected to see a significant increase again in Manchester. But if you look on the right column across the entire region, it's really about 20 to 24% across the region, total change in jobs. And why is this important? Because when we talk about travel, where are people going to be traveling to for jobs? And the increase is nominally mostly in Manchester, even though it's equal percentage-wise across the region. Another thing we're going to be looking at and considering and writing about in the plan is certain trends, related to things like COVID, or such as working from home, interest in other modes, how many people prefer to bike to work or live near where they work, or commute to Boston, for example. So all those things are taken into consideration and affect the transportation system. So that's, I think there's one more slide, Jim. Is that it? This one's a fun one. We just are planning to include some graphics that are enhanced over our previous plans. This one is set up to show, again, where the number of jobs within a certain distance of a highway exit. Again, this is about showing if for transportation on the roadways, what likely would be the time and distance to a large density of jobs. And so each of these circles show a centroid and then differing degrees of distance away from the center, which is at an exit. And the real takeaway here is that 81% of the region's jobs are within 2 miles of the highway exits throughout the region. And then at the bottom it highlights on less than a quarter of all of the overall land. Jim, next slide. So that's where I'll wrap up, and Jim's going to go over the goals and objectives of the plan, which is a big overhaul. We looked at the previous plan, and I'll let Jim explain it, actually. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you very much, Carl. Just want to check, Carl, can you hear me okay?
Yep, no problem.
Great, awesome. Well, thank you so much for going over some of the existing conditions, talking about the trends in employment and housing, and for outlining the scope, which really talks about modes of transportation and planning factors. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about the chapter known as Goals and Objectives in the draft Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And I just want to take a moment to define those two things. A goal is a representation of a desired end state for the region, and the objective is a directional trend towards achieving that goal. And this is really important because in our previous iteration of the transportation plan, long range transportation plan, we didn't make a distinction between goals and objectives. We had goals. As a matter of fact, we had many goals. We had 47 goals, which is a lot to try to prioritize and identify a hierarchy to. And the goals were organized around travel mode. So highway had a certain set of goals, and transit had another set of goals, and bike and walk had a different set of goals. And a lot of times they were iterative, and they weren't always necessarily written to illustrate a desired end state. So in this Metropolitan Transportation Plan, we did a lot of work to identify and revise these goals into goals and objectives that are independently defined. And we ended up with 8 goals. In each of these 8 goals have subordinate objectives. And the goals are organized around planning factors, the federally designated planning factors, and they're written now to reflect a desired end state. And so today I want to take you through these revised goals and objectives so that you can familiarize yourself with them and understand how they influence other elements of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So when we started this process, we needed to do a little bit of ground truthing about what our goals were and how they overlapped with one another in the existing plan, long range plan, and then run them through a litmus test. And so the two graphics you're seeing here are something we used internally as staff to try to identify where we thought there was overlap or redundancy, identify places where we were missing maybe enough information to address the planning factors as laid out by the federal government. And so these are just some of the tools Carl and I used to go through these planning factors and identify strengths and weaknesses. I particularly take a lot of pleasure in this litmus test we created. And you see this matrix here on the right in kind of a beige color. And what we did here is we took the two elements of the scope of work for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and we laid them out in a matrix. And so across the top, you have the modes of transportation. And across the left-hand side, you have the 10 planning factors that Carl laid out earlier in this presentation. And what we ended up doing is taking each of the existing goals, 47 of them, and looking at what that goal is defined of. In this particular one, existing regional goal 1, achieve safer transportation for all users. This is a good goal, right? And we identified how we thought those things overlaid with the scope of work. And so we gave them a score of 2 if they had a direct relation to the scope, and 1 if they had a tangential relation. So in this particular example, achieve safer transportation for all users has a direct relation to the safety planning factor across all modes of transportation. So we gave that 2 across the board. It also is pretty close relationship to security. So we said that was tangential. And this helped us have a discussion about how maybe we could revise this goal to be more succinct and concise and meet more of our um, sort of desired outcomes. And so the recommendation after going through this litmus test was maybe to reframe this one as safe and secure transportation options for all users. And when you do that, you change the matrix. And so this was part of the process we used um, to develop the goals that you will see here in a moment. Again, I just want to take a moment to reiterate the planning factors. I found this really nice graphic, albeit this one's a little outdated because it only shows 8 of the 10 planning factors, but we have the 10 listed out in the left here. But what's really nice about this graphic is it talks about the relationship, or it illustrates the relationship between each planning factor and different roles and responsibilities the MPO, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, as an MPO, has with various agencies at federal and state levels. And so if you take safety and security, which we were just talking about, there's an interrelation there between consultation with federal and state agencies, and that those things then start to influence other spheres of responsibility for the MPO, including the public participation plan, which you guys heard about a couple months ago, and fiscal constraint for things like the long range or metropolitan transportation plan. And so I think it was a particularly nice graphic to illustrate why it's important that we consider these planning factors. So today, we're going to talk about these 8 goals that we've identified. And the first one, which I gave an example of, safety and security. Second, efficiency and preservation. And then 3, 4, and 5 are kind of interrelated. 3 is local economy and access. 4 is slightly bigger scale, regional economy and connectivity. And then 5 is sort of the broadest scale, global connectivity and tourism. And so you can see these things, while they're not a literal 1-for-1 with our planning factors, they each tie elements of 1 or more planning factors into the sort of nature of the goal. And so we have 6, resiliency in the environment, 7, land use and quality of life, and then 8, authentic engagement. So these are kind of catchphrases. I didn't lay out the full language here because it's a bit much to chew all at once. So I just wanted to show you these 8 goals in relation to one another, and then take a moment and dig down another layer into the onion and talk about the exact language for each goal and then the subordinate objective identified. And you'll see later in the presentation the subordination of the objective to the goal then plays into plan evaluation, which is another chapter in the MTP, and something we are obligated to do, which is performance measures. So let's do this first one here. Goal 1, safe and secure transportation for all users. We're not going to look at all these objectives, but I'll take the first one here. Decrease transportation-related fatalities and injuries within the region. So let's take a minute and just remember that, right? Because this is directional. We say we want to decrease fatalities and injuries, but we don't say how much we want to decrease it by, because that's not the responsibility of the objective. The objective is really telling us which direction we want to go. We want a reduction in fatalities and injuries. We're not necessarily saying by how much. We're just identifying that that's the direction we need to go to meet our overall goal. And so we do this for every goal that we've laid out. Goal 2, managed congestion, improved efficiency, and the preservation of the existing transportation system. This one's kind of a big one. For the sake of time, I don't know where we are in time, but I don't know that we'll want to go through each one of these. But you can see we've identified different objectives: increase access and efficiency of the street and highway network, increase vehicle freight and transit travel time reliability. And some of these tie very directly back into our performance measures that we're obligated to report to federal government. Decrease, advance, but some of these are not always tied to performance measures. Some of them are, and some of them are not. And so here's an example of one that doesn't have a performance measure, but is an objective and that will help us meet the goal that we've set forth here. Objective H, advance the establishment of a transportation management association. This objective will help us run a more efficient transportation system, but it's not necessarily something we have to report to federal government. All right, goal 3, a network of pedestrian, bicycle, and transit facilities connecting people to local goods and services. So this is kind of the most zoomed in scale of connectivity of the 3. For the sake of time, I won't go through all these objectives, but just know that each one of these goals has a set of objectives. Some are tied to performance measures and some are not. Goal 4, a highway system that connects all users to economic opportunity through diverse travel choices. Goal 5, passenger rail service connecting the region's economy center to global markets and tourism opportunities. Goal 6, a transportation system capable of sustaining air, water, land, and energy resources while enduring changes to climate, society, and other external impacts. Goal 7, coordinated land use policy and transportation investments for the preservation of infrastructure and the enhancement of the region's quality of life. Finally, Goal 8, an informed public on the current strengths and weaknesses, as well as future opportunities and threats to the region's transportation system. Now, something I want to note about this is this goal does not have any objectives that are tied to our obligation to report performance measures, but these objectives are tied to our public participation plan. And so relative to this goal being about authentic engagement with the public, these objectives are tied back into our public participation plan. Again, they're not, discrete individual numbers or targets. They're just directional movement towards an outcome. So that covers our goals and objectives. I want to just take a minute and if anybody has any serious confusion about what I just went over, I just want to take a minute to address that. If not, we're going to move on to performance metrics. All right. So plan evaluation. This is chapter 5 of the draft Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And so much like our goals and objectives and the scope of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan um, relate to the priorities of the region, the federal government has their own set of transportation goals relating to the priorities of the nation. And they call those National Development Goals, NDGs. So the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, their role as an MPO, is required by the federal government to report a set of performance measures, which we talked about during goals and objectives, that correlate to these national development goals. Now, the performance measures are just that. They're measures. They don't have a discrete number tied to them in terms of what the region's supposed to achieve. It just so happens that because this is a federal requirement, all other MPOs in the region in the state have to do this, as well as the state Department of Transportation. And so there's a collaborative process to set targets for these performance measures that relate back to our national development goals. And so New Hampshire DOT, all of the MPOs, and transit providers got together to set targets for these performance measures that we're about to cover. It's important to note that these measures are also an important tool used in setting criteria for project selection in the MPO's Transportation Improvement Plan, as well as in the state's 10-year plan. And so we won't cover that criteria during this presentation because it's a little bit outside of the scope of what we need to do for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. But you guys have probably seen them before and discussed them in the past frequently, and so you're probably aware of the weighting criteria for selecting projects, and we'll move on from that. So sort of the first topic area of performance measures is safety. And you may remember Zach and Carl giving a nice presentation about these various measures around fatalities and serious injuries. Um, and what I wanted to identify here is that the state has set targets for where they want to be in terms of achieving safety goals or performance measures. And so Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, because they're part of a collaborative process of selecting those targets, supports the state's target in our own metropolitan transportation plan. So whereas the state says the number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries, uh, their target is 51.6. That's an absolute number, which kind of sounds strange, but what this number represents is Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission's portion of the overall population. So this number is kind of divided by the population that we have in our region. That's why it's a fraction. We didn't have zero point 0.6 people become seriously injured. We're just a percentage of the overall population for the state, and so that absolute number is divided out and creates a fraction. But because we know this, we support this target and we adopt it as part of our own performance metrics and our targets. This continues on for various other topic areas. So we have infrastructure condition. And so we track and report the number of travel miles, lane miles in good condition, in poor condition, both on the interstate and on non-interstate national highway system roads. We also do this for bridges. And so again, we support the state target for all of these in our metropolitan transportation plan. And then finally, we do the same thing for reliability, congestion, and freight. The one exclusion here is that travel time reliability for truck travel at the state level is 1.5. We're slightly better than this in terms of the metric because of ongoing construction on our Interstate 93 and other improvements anticipated on our interstate system in the coming years. And so, so we accommodate for that variation in our targets slightly. I just want to go back one slide here. I'm going to go back to safety. I just want to note something. At the beginning, when I was giving the example of goals and objectives, I talked a little bit about how the objective said a decrease in fatalities and serious injuries. Well, now you can see here where the relationship is, right? So we went through the goal. The goal is, safe transportation for all users. The objective is to decrease the number of serious injuries and fatalities. And then here you have a target. This is us, in a very literal way, measuring how many fatalities and serious injuries are happening, assigning a number to it, and then trying to meet that number through the improvements we make to the region's transportation network. So, uh, we have just a few more of these to go, and then I'll wrap it up. This one's a little more confusing. This is the environmental sustainability sort of topic area, and SNHP's target for carbon monoxide reduction is based on the method used by New Hampshire DOT. And SNHPC only reports performance for Manchester's congestion mitigation air quality projects. And as a result of that, the region's CMAQ emissions reductions target for carbon monoxide is 69.233 kilograms per day. And in all honesty, I can't take you through the detailed rationale for why that is. Nate could. Um, but what's important to note about this metric is that reporting requirements for this measure should be ending as of February 2021. So this metric and this performance required reporting is going to end very shortly, we believe. So I put it up here because it will be part of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, even though it's got sort of a known expiration date. And then final category is transit asset management. I'm going to note the categories here, but I'm not noting the targets because those targets were recently new targets were recently adopted by Manchester Transit Authority, which is our only designated recipient of transit dollars in the region. And so we're going to go through the process of adopting our own targets, which may or may not match MTAs. But for the sake of education, I'll note the categories here. So the categories are equipment, rolling stock, and facilities. And for equipment and rolling stock, the way that's measured as a target is as a percentage of vehicles that meet or exceed the useful life benchmark of that particular a vehicle. So if it's a revenue vehicle, i.e. a bus, it falls into a certain asset class, and it gets measured as a percentage of useful life of the total fleet. So if there's 10 vehicles and one of them is not meeting the useful life benchmark metrics, then that asset class would have 90% meeting the benchmark and 10% not meeting the benchmark. The equipment category only really has two vehicles for MTA. It's a loader and a dump truck. And then for rolling stock, that basically constitutes MTA's entire bus fleet, which collects revenue. And then finally, there is a metric for percentage of facilities within a certain level of condition. And there's something called a transit economic requirements model, and it's a fairly detailed asset management software tool designed specifically to measure the life of facilities operated and maintained by transit agencies. There's only one real transit agency we know and care about, and that's Manchester's bus facilities, where they do their maintenance, operation, refueling, parking over on 110 Gas Street. And that facility is quite old, and it's probably due for some upgrades. And so we'll see how MTA's setting targets for that and determine the best course of action in terms of the MPO adopting or setting their own target. one last slide before we end here, and I've already covered this in quite a bit, but I want to recap it for everybody because I think this is a good way to kind of conceive or see the conceptual structure of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan relative to goals, objectives, and plan evaluation. And so Carl started out the presentation noting that the comprehensive plan from 2015 sets a vision for the region, which is a broad statement of the desired future outcome. When would that vision come to fruition? Well, someday it'll come to fruition. It's a vision, it's a very broad view, right? And then as we sort of go down this funnel of specificity, as things become a little more detailed, we've set goals and objectives. And, when will goals and objectives happen? Not today, but we're looking to get there soon. And so, you might think of those as in terms of a time spectrum happening tomorrow. Not literally tomorrow, but we're working towards those things in the near term. And so goals, again, just to reiterate, um, I, are idealized achievements derived from the region's vision, and objectives are directional trends towards or away from a specific outcome of a goal. And then finally, as I just showed you in the plan evaluation section of this presentation, performance measures set specific areas of quantitative calculation to track progression towards an objective or goal, which we set as targets. And so hopefully this helps tie all this information back together. I know it was a lot to take in. They do all interrelate with one another. And Carl and I and other staff, Zach, who've been working on this Metropolitan Transportation Plan, put a lot of effort into making sure that there was cohesion and continuity between the vision, goals, objectives, and performance measures that you saw today. And we hope that you'll agree with that when it comes time to adopt the plan. And as always, if people have thoughts about what they saw today relative to performance measures, goals, and objectives, and they want to bring that their thoughts and comments to us, we'd love to hear about them. And with that, I'm gonna hand it back over to Carl to just note the next steps and close out the presentation.
Great, thanks, James. The next steps are really just us continuing to document, complete the chapters, add some interesting graphics, both tables, graphics, etc. Make it a meaningful and easy to understand document. In the immediate term, I know that Nate's going over the project list. These are for projects we want to include, again, in the out years, all the way out to 2045. And next month, we'll be covering the projects, the model, and the fiscal constraints, the fiscal analysis. I think I missed. I think that's it.
Here's our contact information. You always know how to get a hold of us. You can call us anytime.
Any questions for Carl or James? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other business, Sylvia, before we adjourn?
No, not on this at all, no.
Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn the MPO?
So moved.
I'll second.
That was Mike Witten and Peter Capano. All right, I think we can go through this thumbs up if that works for everybody on adjourning. I see John O'Connor, that's good for me. Okay, I saw Lucy, she got her thumb up. Thank you, everybody. All right.
Okay, so we'll call to order the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. First action is the meeting minutes of October 27th, 2020. I have a motion to approve.
So moved, Linda Kuhnhart.
Did you get that, Linda? Linda Kuhnhart?
I'll second, John O'Connor.
John O'Connor, second. Okay, we'll go over the list. Jeff from Auburn,
Approve.
Bill Bedford. Just have to unmute yourself.
Approve.
Thank you, Bill. I did mute a few people because I heard background noise. I didn't know who it was, so everybody got muted, sorry. Candia Al Hall? Thanks, Al. Chester, Andrew Haddock?
Yes.
Deb
Aye.
Munson? Deb Munson?
Aye.
Derry, Jeff,
Yes.
and John?
Yes.
Francistown, Linda?
Yes.
Goffstown, Dave?
Yes.
Londonderry, Brian?
Yes.
And Suzanne? Did we lose Suzanne? I think we did. Let's see, Art,
Yes.
Manchester, Peter,
Yes.
and Ray. Ray, you'll have to hit *6, I think.
Yes.
Thanks, Ray. Dan O'Neill
Yes.
and Tom Clow
Yes.
and John Hiltz from Wyndham.
Yes.
And we have another phone caller ending in 0133. Could you identify yourself? You have to unmute yourself. *6. 0133.
All right, so Sylvia, this is Mark Student from New Boston, and I abstain on the minutes.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Okay. You had me worried there for a second, Mark. Okay, and I think that is it on the commission minutes.
All right, so moving on to the agenda, we have a presentation from Maddie on processed glass aggregate in road and infrastructure projects.
All right, can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right, I'm gonna, hang on, I'm gonna share my screen. Bear with me. All right, can you see that okay?
We can.
All right. All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Maddie Diano. Today I'm going to be talking about glass recycling and more specifically about a program offered here in New Hampshire through the organization, the Northeast Resource Recovery Association, that assists communities in using recycled glass in road and infrastructure projects called processed glass aggregate. So I know a lot of our communities are already NRRA members, but for anyone that's not familiar, the Northeast Resource Recovery Association is a recycling nonprofit out of Epsom, New Hampshire that helps communities manage their own recycling programs. The NRRA is one of a handful of nonprofits in the country that provides cooperative marketing and purchasing programs for recycling. Meaning that it negotiates competitive pricing with companies who purchase recyclables and then helps its member communities sell their recyclables to those companies. The organization also provides educational programs, technical assistance, and school programs in the general areas of solid waste management and recycling. The NRA has over 400 members, including municipalities, businesses, and individuals throughout the Northeast. As an aside, I volunteered with the NRA over this past year on its 2 glass recycling programs, which I'll go into shortly. So the NRA has been experiencing an increased interest by its member communities on what to do with their glass recycling. And just some background as to why this is happening. So recycling glass has become increasingly challenging, especially in the Northeast. So first and foremost, transporting and disposing of glass is expensive, and that is because glass is heavy. And both transportation and disposal costs for waste and recyclables are determined by weight. So the Northeast also has the highest disposal fees in the country for municipal solid waste because we have the least amount of available space for new or expanded landfills. So this disposal cost is rising and will only continue to rise over time. Second, markets for recycled glass are relatively limited here in the Northeast. This is due to a number of factors, but the biggest of which I can think of is the food and beverage industry no longer really makes jars and bottles and containers out of glass so much anymore, but rather plastic and aluminum. Again, this is because glass is heavy, it's expensive to transport, it's expensive to process. Case in point, the country's largest buyer of recycled glass was a company out of Medford, Massachusetts, which purchased recycled glass and made new glass bottles and jars. This company actually closed in 2018, so it further exacerbates the problem here in the Northeast. Additionally, keeping glass-like contaminants such as ceramics, Pyrex, and porcelain out of glass has become increasingly cumbersome. And this is due to the nature of our single and dual stream recycling processes today. So these glass-like materials that I just mentioned, porcelain, ceramics, they are absolutely not allowed in supplies of glass to be made back into bottles and jars or fiberglass. And this is because those materials can actually damage the equipment come time to produce those final products. And these glass-like contaminants are making their way more and more into our recycling streams. And so when you have all kinds of glass thrown together in one bin or one area, it often breaks and then it becomes just about impossible to sort. So due to a number of these factors, and as I've mentioned, the NRRA has been experiencing an increased interest by its members on what to do with their glass recycling. And so the NRRA offers two programs for glass management. And the first one is the option to recycle glass bottles and jars into fiberglass insulation. So just a snapshot for how this program works. It only accepts glass bottles and jars. The NRRA collects those glass bottles and jars from its participating communities. That glass supply is sent to Canada, where a vendor cleans, crushes, and further processes that glass. And then it's sent back into the United States, where it's made into fiberglass insulation. And about 40 communities currently participate in this program through the NRRA in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Massachusetts. But the challenge with participating in this program is that the specifications are very strict. So you really can't have any of those glass-like contaminants that I just talked about. Again, because they can damage the equipment that actually makes the fiberglass insulation. So for communities that are unable to meet those strict glass-only standards, the NRRA has provided for decades an option for crushing glass bottles and jars and those glass-like materials into what is called processed glass aggregate, or PGA is what I'm going to say from here on out because it's kind of a mouthful. And PGA can be used as a subbase in road and infrastructure projects in the place of sand or gravel. Right now, about 65 communities are currently participating in this program through the NRRA in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Massachusetts. So now I'm just going to talk more about how PGA is created and used. And this is a picture of a PGA pile in New London, New Hampshire. So communities participating in this program collect and store glass in containers or bunkers at their local transfer stations. Those transfer stations then transport the glass themselves to one of NRRA's host sites, where it's weighed and then dumped into a pile. And then NRRA charges members by the ton for their glass when it's delivered to the host site. In New Hampshire, that charge is around $35 to $40 a ton. So I'll just note that different states have different levels of what they accept in their PGA. This is a PGA pile in New Hampshire, and on the top there, I believe that is crushed up toilets. So in New Hampshire, we're allowed to use those ceramics and porcelain materials in PGA. The NRRA has 5 host sites collecting glass for processed glass aggregate. 3 of those locations are in New Hampshire. 1 is in Springfield, Vermont, and the other is in Dennis, Massachusetts. Next to each location here, you can see the number of communities that host site serves. So for example, in New London, New Hampshire, that host site is collecting glass from 25 different communities for its processed glass aggregate. And so this map on the side here, a little hard to see, but the colored recycle symbols are all of the host sites. The green communities are those that participate in the PGA program, and the blue are those that are participating in the fiberglass. And so bear with me, I want to show you something else. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and show you. Let's see here. Bear with me. Maybe not. Oh, here we go. So this map right here that I have in my presentation is actually a screenshot from, can everyone see this? It says through the looking glass.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that was actually a screenshot of a map of the story map that we created, which talks about the NRRA's 2 glass programs. I just wanted to show you that quickly. It's a really neat tool if you're interested in learning more about these programs. And so the map I was talking about, oh, it's frozen. There it is. So this is that map. And what's cool about this is you can zoom in. You can click on each of the communities and see which program they're participating in and where their glass is being sent to. So I just clicked on the town of Chester, which participates in the processed glass aggregate program, and their glass is sent to the host site in Rochester. So it's a really neat tool, and I highly encourage anyone who's interested in this to check it out. We just released it a few weeks ago. So back to here. Can you see my presentation again?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. All right. So once a host site has approximately 1,000 tons of glass collected, the NRRA brings in a mobile crusher to turn that glass into usable aggregate. So here's a photo of the glass crusher at the host site in New London. It's actually a retrofitted rock crusher, and the machinery involves a screen that crushes the glass to a particular size. And the size to which the PGA is crushed to depends on the state, and I'll go more into that in a few minutes. So in terms of how you can actually use PGA, again, it varies by state as well as state agency, but in general, PGA can be used for a variety of construction projects. It can be used under roads, under sidewalks. It can be used as foundation under buildings, be used for pipe bedding or landfill cover. And I have some more specific examples that I'll go over at the end of this presentation. It is common for PGA to be mixed with gravel, but it can be used up to 100% in some private and municipal applications, again, depending on the state. One key thing to know about PGA is that it may not be used uncovered. So there is a misconception about PGA that it's sharp and jagged, and if you touch it, you could cut yourself or it'll pop your car tires. That's not true. PGA is ground so finely that it does resemble sand. But just to avoid those misconceptions, most states specify that it has to be underneath something else. It cannot be left on a surface for the final application. So as I've sort of alluded to throughout the presentation, requirements for creating and using PGA vary by state, and they also vary by state agency. And when I say state agency, I'm talking about the Departments of Environmental Services and Departments of Transportation. This frankly gets very confusing pretty fast. So for the purpose of this presentation today, I'm not going to go into all of those specific requirements and allowable uses for PGA by state. If you are interested in that information, we did spend the better part of last year researching and compiling all of that information for New England states, and we summarized it in a pretty comprehensive chart, and that is available on the NRRA's website. But for now, when I talk about different requirements for creating and using PGA, I'm talking about things such as contamination requirements. So, for example, one state might say we'll allow up to 1% of the total batch of PGA to have contaminants such as like plastic particles or plastic caps or things that aren't glass. Whereas another state might say, well, we'll allow up to 5% of the total batch to contain things like that. There are different size requirements, as I've already said. For example, in Massachusetts, all PGA for any project has to be crushed into pieces that are 3/8 of an inch or less in size. In Vermont, all PGA can be crushed into pieces that are 1 inch or less in size. And then in New Hampshire, it gets more confusing in that any PGA used for a state project has to be crushed to that 3/8 inch standard, but for municipal projects, it can be crushed into that 1 inch or less standard. So there's different application requirements. Like I just said, the requirements for using PGA in a state project are different than that if they're used in a municipal project here in New Hampshire. So as you can infer, it gets pretty complicated very quick, but I said, all of that information is on the NRA's website. I will just say, I think the biggest takeaway that we've had from really looking at all of these states and agencies and different requirements and specifications is that unfortunately, every state is sort of doing its own thing when it comes to PGA. And although there are a lot of similarities, the requirements are not exactly consistent across the board. And as you can infer, that gets a little confusing, especially for communities that are looking into trying to join this program. So again, I encourage you to look at the NRA's website for more information on that. So there are lots of benefits to using PGA, and I like to group them into these 3 categories. The first of which, unsurprisingly, are the environmental benefits of PGA. So by using glass for PGA, you're pulling that out of the overall waste stream, and less material is going to landfills or incinerators. Additionally, glass is inert, so it does not erode or won't leach any contaminants into the soil when it's applied to certain projects. The second category of benefits are related to the physical properties of PGA. First and foremost, PGA is not frost susceptible, and this was determined by the Army Corps of Engineers in the late 90s that did a study on PGA. So it's not frost susceptible, and that is, of course, because glass can't absorb water. So it actually may perform better in certain road and infrastructure projects with respect to frost heaves. And through our work over this past year, we did hear from communities firsthand who used 100% PGA as a subbase under roads that years and years later, they don't see those pavement cracks or damage associated with frost heaves. We also heard that PGA is very compactable and drains very well. And again, because it doesn't absorb water, you can store it outside uncovered year round and it won't freeze. Oh, and then of course, there are the financial benefits for using PGA. As I've already said a couple times, when you remove glass from the waste stream, you are saving in those transportation and disposal costs. I'll give the example of the community of Stratford, Vermont, was paying $121 per ton to get rid of their dual stream recycling. They ended up pulling their glass out of that, and they were incentivized by their local materials recovery facility, but that price of $121 a ton to deal with that recycling went down to $40 a ton. So using PGA can also be a cost avoidance strategy for many communities. So this past summer, we conducted a survey, tried to collect as many examples as possible of communities using PGA throughout the Northeast. So now I'm going to share with you a few of those examples. So the town of New London has been using PGA in its municipal projects since the early 90s. So they really are a champion of PGA use in New Hampshire. So some of my examples are from New London, but this is an example of PGA being used as a subbase in constructing a local road. Again, in New London, this is an example of PGA being used as a base at their public works garage. And this is just a before and after picture of the PGA being put down and then compacted. Again, in New London, PGA was used as a parking lot base at one of their town buildings. And we also heard from the town of Lee, New Hampshire, who said they used PGA as a foundation under their bulky waste building. So this is the before and after of that foundation. And then again in Lee, PGA was used again as a foundation under some open top dumpsters. And then one of the more unusual examples we received was the use of PGA in a more recreational setting. And I apologize, this is a blurry photo, but it was the only one I could find. So the Parsons Marsh Trail is in Massachusetts. It's a fully accessible trail managed by the Berkshire Natural Resources Council. It was constructed in 2018, so it's relatively new. And PGA was used as a sub-base under the kiosk that you see here, and it was also used under a bench and a fully accessible picnic table. And then what's more interesting about this example is that the PGA was put under a base called EcoMat, which is a matting that's made of recycled single-use plastics. So this was a unique example that we received, and I wanted to share it because it's sort of funny that it's using, two recycled materials in this recreational setting. So that's all I have for you today. That was a pretty general, broad overview of the process class aggregate program through the Northeast Resource Recovery Association. Like I said, there are plenty of resources on their website, including the chart that I talked about, the story map, and some articles on glass recycling. So highly encourage anyone who's interested to check that out. But with that, I will take any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Representative John O'Connor. I want to compliment you on your presentation. It's excellent.
Oh, thank you.
I am one of the co-sponsors with Karen Ebel, Representative Ebel from New London, that sponsored a special study on the recycling streams and the solid waste management. Of that, which had probably 40 to 50 stakeholders, we had 30 some odd meetings, and it's HB 617, so I can always send a link to Sylvia. But we did spend a lot of time on the PGA. And one of the things we did is we've, under our recommendations, is file legislation that you had not mentioned yet. And part of the legislation is the fact that to require DOT to promote the use of PGA, including a pilot project, and these are on the higher classifications of the roads. Class 1 is, you'd have to meet special ASHRO standards, but class 2 and 3 is a little bit different. And so they're also going to be conducting a pilot project and then ultimately ensuring PGA to be used in all the state process on an ongoing basis. So your other point on cost avoidance is an excellent point, because like you said, the cost of picking it up and transferring it, it was easier to take it and throw it in the regular waste area. But now there's a situation where they can save a considerable amount of money. So there is more legislation coming out regarding recycling materials throughout. But the link that I'm going to send Sylvia shows everything else, including plastics and for different types of guardrails. So it's very, very interesting. But again, your presentation was excellent. Nice job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And yes, thank you for bringing that up. I am familiar with that report, and I did assist with putting together that testimony for the bill you're talking about. I did not bring it up because the last I heard it was stalled. And but I'm happy you brought that up. So thank you. And that was an excellent report, and it's a great resource.
Yeah, the COVID situation vacated a lot of that to try to get some other bills through. So the filing process is going on right now. Senator Waters is entering some more bills, and so won't Representative Ebel.
Excellent. Thank you. I look forward to hearing more about that in the future.
Linda Kunat, Maddie, is that map, is that on the NARR site or?
Yep, it's on this website right here at the bottom here. But if you just type in, NRRA, not NRA, NRRA, it's right on their homepage because it was just published a few weeks ago. So it should be relatively easy to find. I'm happy to email that to you as well.
Oh, thanks. It was great.
Hey, Maddie, this is James Veo with the Planning Commission. And I just want to know, as you were going through this presentation, one of the things I was thinking about is how using an aggregate like this reduces demand for other aggregates, which requires pretty destructive process of quarrying natural environments in our state. So, you know, an added benefit that I think of, and it makes me kind of happy, is that, there's a reduced demand to, tear down forests and build quarries throughout our region. And so, just one more benefit to think of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think thank you for bringing that up. I didn't mention it, but that's also part of the cost avoidance strategy. By using this material, you reduce your costs in, extracting and purchasing gravel and sand. And weirdly enough, I learned over this past year that there actually is a sand shortage in the world, which seems kind of silly because there's a lot of sand, but there is a real environmental issue. So yes, thank you for bringing that up.
Maddie, I have a question for you. Has anyone looked into using this material in concrete itself as an aggregate in concrete?
I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I'll have to look more into that. I have no idea if it can be used in actual concrete.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but thank you.
Is there an abundance of the available product, or are they approaching selling out all they have? Is it time to open new plants?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Right now, there isn't a huge demand for PGA, and it's kind of a chicken and the egg problem, and that not a lot of communities are aware of it. Right now, there is a demand sort of locally and for municipal projects, and for the communities that are near those host sites, it's great because they're nearby and they can use it locally. We're not seeing so much of a demand on the state level, and I think that in part is because you would need a vast quantity of PGA, for example, for a state highway project, and that vast quantity doesn't exist right now between all of the 5 host sites. And, it does take a considerable amount of time to collect all the glass, and then you have to bring someone in to crush it. And so I think it's not exactly a cost-effective option for, per se, the DOT at the moment. But the more that we can create demand for it, the more the program can be expanded. And the NRA can establish, more host sites, and we can create more of this product.
Do you have to know what it costs per ton to purchase?
Yes, and all of that information I don't know at the top of my head, but it is on the NRA's website. But great question. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, any last questions?
All right, well, thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, that was excellent. Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. One last little piece of business. I just wanted to let the group know that we're about to send out our media blast, and one of the things that is going to be on it is a program that we were lucky enough to get funding from AARP, and that is to host, not to host, but to organize through 3 virtual volunteer fairs. And this all came about with our age-friendly work and our work with volunteer driver programs that, because of the pandemic, they've really had a shortage of drivers. So we are going to host these, we are going to coordinate 3 virtual volunteer fairs, and we are working with the towns of Auburn, Bedford, and Francistown. And the real hosts are the public libraries. And we're really excited. Not only will we be featuring our local volunteer driving programs, but also other agencies that are looking for volunteers We have 2 others in Francistown, 1 other in Auburn, and I'm working with the town of Bedford in hopes to get a couple other agencies needing volunteers. So keep a lookout for that, and hopefully we'll continue those volunteer fairs next year. But this is all going to happen in December, and we're pretty excited about it. So just a little advertisement on that one.
Anyone else? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That's Peter.
Second.
That's Ray Clement. All right, thumbs
Attaboy,
up.
Ray.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Stay safe.
Bye now.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Hey, Sylvia,
Yeah.
I'm still having a problem with your white beard comment.
You look very nice in your white beard.
There you go. Maybe you will too one day.
Oh, thanks a lot, Peter.